Hi everyone, I'm having a lot of trouble doing my video on my computer, so I'm going to give this a shot. So, with informed consent, I found it quite interesting to the level of depth that the ACA went into in regards to this topic, mostly in A2, AB, because of noting how there's different types of informed consent that we need to give. We need to give a sense of, okay, what are our treatment goals, our risks, our benefits of therapy. Perhaps there's fees and bills that we need to be able to explain and articulate, because I've worked in mobile crisis before, and I understand that there's still a lot of concern about, well, do I want to engage in this service? Because what if I get a bill in the mail that's unexpected? Now I'm in debt now. And that also ties into the first point that the ACA makes in regards to informed consent with Article A2A, talking about how it's important to not only just review our informed consent with the client, but with documentation, but we also need to be able to review it verbally and going over that. That ties into the article that I found for the purpose of this discussion. It was entitled Reconsidering Informed Consent, and it was brought up in the context of those individuals who want to transition before the age of 18. However, I do feel like the argument stands that there are some individuals out there who can consent, or who do display an ability to consent prior to that age. And that's due for a number of reasons. That can be due to perhaps that individual has had to be more mature at a younger age. I work in a school, and I've found that the parents who aren't as attentive to those kids, the successful kids in that category, are actively seeking out things for their own well-being. Sometimes that includes services. However, they're not able to consent for those services because parents aren't able or unwilling to open their child up to that service. So I found that quite interesting, this idea that, okay, can consent be given before the age of 18? And if so, how can we test that? How can we regulate that and make it available for all individuals? My form that I looked at was through the Center of Ethical Practices, and it had said nothing about age. It was clear that the vernacular that it was written in was not really appropriate for perhaps someone who isn't familiar with clinical terminology, talking about the risks and benefits. It went on into a list of naming possible negative repercussions, and a lot of them were like neurological and psychological negative repercussions that prior to entering counseling you would assume that your average Joe wouldn't be able to understand or know the definitions of those terms. And while it did cover all the bases of that was highlighted in the ACA, I don't think it did a very good job, and maybe that's because it's up to the counselor to be able to review that informed consent document verbally with the client. So when I did look at the Virginia state laws on the document called Governing the Practice of Professional Counseling, I noticed that informed consent only appeared 3 times. It appeared stating that it was the most important thing that we need to do. Secondly, that informed consent must be gained before we start any form of documentation, looking at the client's previous history, medical records, or whatever, if we need to get consent first. And more importantly, talking about the idea of dual relationships and how we need to get informed consent regarding that. I think that's important to all of us, since we're taking this course with a spiritual context in it, and how there may be some of us who could fall into the trap of seeing one of their clients quite regularly at a spiritual event and then start bringing up topics that aren't appropriate for that climate that they're in. So that reinforces that we need to engage in therapy at this time during the week in this setting, so we can achieve this goals and mitigate any risks that we may encounter. So I found that this has been quite an interesting topic to discuss, especially in regards to mandated counselling and how that can apply to us as counsellors in the future, since there will be individuals who don't want to receive counselling, who are just there, and they're there so they can be in compliance with any legal requirements of that. So I'm hoping that we can learn, or I'm hoping that one of you guys have discussed more about that so I can learn from you. So sorry that this is the format that I've had to do it in. Please let me know what I can do in the future to make my discussion videos more engaging or more informative. So thanks.